Welcome to Real Estate Real World, where we talk to the movers, shakers, and leaders that are getting it done right now in the real estate industry and beyond. I'm your host, Marguerite Crespillo, and I started this podcast simply dedicated to calling people about what's really happening in this crazy roller coaster ride of real estate. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and stay up to date on the newest stuff by adding yourself to the list at www.realestaterealworld.com. Now, let's dive into the world of real estate. Hello. It is time for Real Estate Real World, and I'm Marguerite Crespillo, and I am super excited to be here today with my fabulous guest. It's interesting, I have this whole little bio, but I've known this guy from the sidelines for a long time. I remember when he popped on the scene in 2009, co-founding the National Real Estate Post. And it quickly turned into a go-to resource for industry professionals with over 250,000 subscribers nationwide. And 2009 was right in the middle of the REO crisis and the mortgage meltdown. And so these guys were going on and on about what was going on in the mortgage industry. And so they became like the go-to place to listen in. So Frank earned a spot on the prestigious Inman 100 list in 2010. His expertise has been featured on Fox News After the Bell, solidifying his reputation as a trusted voice in real estate. As a dedicated mortgage loan officer, Frank prioritizes timely closings, transparent communication, and thorough lead follow-up to support his partner's success. Through innovation solutions like MoveTube, which I'm hoping we're going to hear a little bit about today, he helps partners stand out in competitive markets with AI-narrated property videos and streamlined open house QR code flyers. With over 2,500 mortgage transactions and a committed team behind him, Frank ensures reliability, innovation, and shared growth in every partnership, setting new benchmarks for success in the real estate market. So welcome, my friend Frank.
Wow, that was nice.
Wasn't that fancy?
It was very nice. Yes.
What's funny is I do remember when you guys came blazing on the scene because there was so much going on at that time. I was in full blown in the REO crisis, selling Fannie Mae and HUD and all those homes. And I remember even when I got the Fannie Mae account, it was like the end of 2009, I think. And that was like the coveted account to get, right? That was the big one. And I'll never forget Kelvin, who was my asset manager at the time. He goes, we're going to try you out on a couple REOs and see how you do. They ended up giving me 90 properties. Wow. 90, just a couple. And they were in, like, I live in Northern California outside of Lincoln, and they were in Jackson, Amador County. He goes, will you cover those areas? I was like, sure. We were willing to take anything. We'd take anything. And so 2 hours away, we ended up getting all these properties. I ended up becoming the #1 agent in Jackson.
No way.
And the agents hated me over there. They're like, why are you here? Why aren't they giving them to our local agents? I'm like, well, apparently they couldn't find an agent in your area that could handle this stuff. So
right.
It was kind of a wild ride. And you were full deep into the mortgage kind of meltdown stuff going on, right?
Oh, yeah. That's how we found our place. It was just a weird thing. Actually, it started, I could tell something was about to go wrong. So I'd been in the business like 20 years or something when the big crash came or something. And it just, golly, Marguerite, you remember, it was just like, you go to Starbucks and you'd get your coffee. And while you're doing that, the barista would be like, do you need to refinance? You need to buy a house? Like everybody was a mortgage person. And so it just was so strange. And I started wanting to coach my people and train I had 50 loan officers working for me, had 3 brick and mortar offices. And I could just tell something was going to go wrong. So I started getting some coaching and I wanted to coach my guys, but I stumbled on doing sales meetings through a webinar, which was okay. But I saw there was a camera. You could do a webcam so they could see me. And I was like, man, I think I'm going to, maybe I could. And I saw you could record a video. So I thought maybe it'd be better if I just pre-record a video and send it to my team. And that's how it all started. So then it was shortly after that, I started sending these videos to my personal team of only 50 loan officers. But then our mortgage company, First Party Financial at the time, saw them and liked them and said, let's send them out to the whole organization, which is about 1,300 people. And then it just started to blossom from there and started to grow. And then the crash happened. So we started doing this just before the big explosion happened. And Brian Stevens partnered with me. My brother was helping me at first. They could do it for about 6 months, and then it blew up, right? The market blew up and I couldn't pay him anymore. So Brian was there, and Tim Kearns, our boss at the time, said, hey, work with Brian. And I was like, yeah, but I hate that guy. And he goes, yeah, he doesn't like you either. But you guys are idiots, and you guys, I know you guys would love each other if you just got to know each other. I'm like, okay. And I asked him, he said, all right. And then we became best pals.
That's funny.
And yeah, and it just blew up. We were just talking about the mortgage industry, and we just happened to catch lightning in a bottle. We happened to be doing that thing at that right time, and it just caught, and it became quite an interesting chapter in my 36-year career in the mortgage
How
business.
they call it, you went viral, right? Back then, I don't think they had a name for it, but
Yeah, I don't even know. Yeah. Let's put it this
viral.
way. When we started, YouTube was not even owned by Google yet. It was not at all. Yeah, they were their own, whoever they were, whoever invented it, still owned it themselves before Google bought it.
It's funny because I remember it being August of 2006, and I remember putting a house on the market, and 2 weeks later, we had nothing, crickets, like no
Mm,
showing, no nothing, and I
mm,
was weird. Like, I felt like the winds had just changed, but obviously had no idea what was gonna happen, but
yeah.
I felt like the winds had just changed. I'm like, "That's really weird." And that was August of 2006, and then a friend of mine from Wells Fargo said, "Hey, they're asking me for some of the top agents in the area to put on this REO list." And I'm like, "What's an REO?"
Yeah.
And he's, "Can you just fill out this information?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I'll get to it." And like a month later, no, a couple months later, he's, "Marguerite, I really need you to like fill out this information." I'm like, "Okay." Like he's like trying to chase me down to give me business, right? Like how
Right,
bad.
right.
And I finally got it filled out. And on Christmas Eve, I'll never forget, we were up in Tahoe and I got 5 assets signed to me from Wells Fargo. I was like,
Wow.
that's weird. Like I didn't,
One on. Yeah.
something's going on. And I started getting all these requests for BPOs and all kinds of crazy stuff. And then the whole world just went like sideways.
It turned upside down and went inside out. That was quite the cataclysmic event. And for any real estate agents and originators that were not in the business during that time, you just don't even know. That was an explosive, highly explosive, crazy event that really rocked the entire world. It wasn't, yeah,
Well, it's interesting because I've been saying repeatedly this last year is that we have an entire generation of real estate agents and consumers, frankly, who have not seen challenges in the market since 2010,
yeah,
right? When 2010 was really the bottom. And since 2010, we've only had home prices skyrocket, interest rates stay in the low twos and threes.
yeah.
And so as soon as interest rates went back to what we would call normal,
7.
yeah, people were like flipped out.
Yeah,
And so it's just been interesting. I'm like, we've been through this before, you know. This is
yeah,
not like it's literally the last 14 years. Even if you've got an agent who says, I've been around 10 years, cool. You still haven't been through a
right.
challenging market.
You don't even know. Yeah.
No. How's it
Mm.
impacting the mortgage? How are things impacting the mortgage market now? Because obviously we're seeing for the majority, refis have gone away. Of course, there's still some, but what are you seeing in the mortgage industry with all of the hopped in loan officers and all that?
I think I'm seeing the same thing you're probably seeing in the real estate industry these days, especially with the NAR settlement and that news and what's going on there. We might want to chat about that a bit. But in the mortgage space, it's absolutely exactly what you said. There was a lot of people that got into the business after that 2010 era, that 2012 and beyond era, where in reality, they've really never really had it too tough. It's been a pretty good market for quite some time. And
Yeah.
both on the purchase side and on the especially on the refi side during COVID and all that was just nuts, right? That was insane. And so we do have a lot of originators that are out there who just are feeling the pressure of having to work for it, having to hustle and go out there and get it done. And I think so the number might be wrong. What nowadays, every year you got to renew your NMLS license, you got to send in your mortgage licensing federally, you have to send in some continuing education. It's a once a year thing.
Right.
And this past go around, I think it's something like 30+% of originators just didn't renew. They're just like
Mhm.
done. So in the mortgage space, with rates being like you said, I agree. If we're in the sevens, I'd cut my teeth on 7% interest rates. You know what I mean? Like I did that for a long time. And for a lot of those LOs, they had to go. They just don't know what to do. And unfortunately, they don't know where to turn to get some advice. There's a lot of doom and gloom out there, right? Even among, especially if you, I hate to say it, but if you're a Facebook dweller and a group dweller and you're in a bunch of these Facebook, especially, I don't know about on the real estate side, but on the mortgage side, it can get to be a pretty doom and gloom. Woe is me. The sky
Oh,
is
yeah.
falling. Let's just say everybody misery loves company. And so the originators that fall into those places, they're getting out, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of business to be had on the real estate side and on the mortgage side. You just got to roll up the sleeves and get down to what works, man. Make some calls, talk to some people, and get hustling. And
Yeah, it's been
the way it is.
interesting on the real estate side when an agent is, "I've had this house on the market for 7 days and it had no activity." I'm like, "Okay, let's talk about what you did," that kind of thing. But it's just been fascinating to watch, and then now, of course, with the whole NIR settlement, which people need to first understand that's effectively like writing an offer, but you don't have an offer accepted yet. You don't have a counter. You don't have it like that. That's a long road still ahead. Of course, what's causing the majority of the problems is not only the media grabbing a hold of that and losing their minds, but every single agent posting something about it as well. That's not, it's just adding fuel to the fire. I don't know. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on this whole thing?
I think with the NAR settlement, I'm just a weird guy. And I think it's just because I've been through cataclysmic events in the industry, more than one. We've been, of course, the big one that we just talked about, but
Right.
there's been other times where it's been challenging for one reason or another. And
Right.
hey, I've been doing it for 36 years. I don't know how long you've been doing it. I've been 36. You go back, how long?
30,
30? Yeah.
30.
You
Mhm.
go back 30, 35 years, and we've been through a lot of things. But what I've always found, I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I've always found that when these type of events transpire and it's scary and shocking when it happens, but I don't know, it seems like it always turns out to be okay. In fact, I think it's exciting to see what's going to happen with this thing, and I'm wildly curious to see how everyone adapts. And because I 100% guarantee you that there's going to be many agents who thrive in it, who just
Opportunity.
it becomes like the coolest thing that ever happened. Like
Yeah.
that was cool because this did this for me and now this is where I'm at. I know that's there. And
Yeah.
someone's going to get it figured out and it's going to be exciting. On the mortgage side, I don't think this thing really impacts the mortgage side too difficult. Hey, on the big crash, we got the mortgage peeps took it in the shorts quite a bit. And with this NAR thing, the real estate agents are getting something put on their plate that they have to deal with. And but we got through it, and I know the real estate agents are going to get through it too. It's just going to be a different way of doing business, and people are going to thrive in it. They're going to thrive.
One of the questions that I've seen talked about and come up a lot in this is if in fact the buyers are the sellers are no longer allowed to pay commissions to the buyer's agent, which I can't see that happening, but then they're saying then it's going to have to be rolled into the mortgage somehow. And then yet you have VA buyers and FHA buyers, right? So what are your thoughts on that? How realistic is that?
I
And
don't think that's very realistic. I just don't find that realistic. Now, who knows, right? The government may step in, right? And on FHA and VA loans, they may make some provision for that. But I don't see that happening. Again, I don't know, but I'm doubtful of that. I think what we need to consider though is yes, it's going to say, or it does say sellers don't pay buyers, right? Buyer's agent commissions, but they pay listing agents commissions. So they do. And I can assure you, from what I can see, I don't see any reason that a listing agent can't do an agreement with a buyer's agent saying, I'll give you X amount of my commission. if you
Funnily
do
enough,
that.
that's how it's been in California for
It's the way
almost
it's
the entire
always
time
been.
that I've been in real estate.
It's the way
The
it
seller,
is.
the listing agent, the commission, and the
Right.
listing agrees to share with an agent
Right.
who represents a buyer. That's how it's
Right.
been in California the whole time, which is why I'm baffled that, except that they're going after national companies, they're not going after state laws and state
Yeah.
requirements.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's interesting. And people say the seller's never going to pay that. And I'm like, look, I remember, you have to remember, Frank, the days of the Nehemiah program.
Oh, yeah.
So back in the day, the Nehemiah
Oh, yeah.
program, for listeners who don't know what it is, the Nehemiah program was a kind of like a down payment assistance program for home buyers where the seller would pay 6% of the sales price to the Nehemiah program on top of commissions, closing costs, whatever else they were paying. And then Nehemiah would gift that 5%. I think they kept 1%. And they would gift
Yeah, they would
5%.
grant it or something. So the seller was funding a nonprofit, paying a nonprofit organization to help people with it, which
Right,
was nothing was illegal about that. And then
right,
Nehemiah would then give a grant to the buyer, just
right.
a juggle in the legal.
Around, right.
Yeah, what workaround? And hey, honestly, kick-ass program. But like you said, people say they'll never pay that.
We sold a ton
Okay.
of homes on that Nehemiah program. And the sellers, of course, because of what was happening in the market at the time, were happy to pay it.
Yeah.
Like it was either that or continue dropping the price on their home and never sell their home.
Right.
What I do know about this industry, and I'm sure you'll concur with this, is we're very resilient. And
Absolutely.
we'll find a way, come hell or high water, to make it work for not only ourselves, but for the clients and the consumers out there. There's always some, just like you said earlier on, there's an opportunity in there. It's just a matter of what that opportunity is going to look like.
Marguerite, I guarantee you, there's already teams that are formulating their plan. There's already teams that are putting it together, getting it put together, and they're just going to come out of this thing shining. Yeah, I do think this though, thanks to the media, right? I believe that sellers are going to scrutinize the commission a little bit more, right, going forward. So maybe it's not going to be 5 that would normally be split. Maybe it's going to wind up being 3.5, right? Something like that. And then, or 4. And then maybe in the private remarks in the MLS or whatever, it's probably different all around the country, but maybe in the private remarks, it's saying that, hey, I'll cooperate 1% or something like that. I do think that we will see buyer agent commissions reduce. I think that will happen. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think they will. I also think you'll see buyer agents, like you have discount brokerages for sellers. I think you're going to see the discount buyer agent thing pop up. I'll represent you for $500, something like that. I don't know, but
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? There's going to be opportunity. There's going to be opportunity to, for lack of a better word, exploit the situation and win with it. It's going to happen. And I don't know. For one, I'm excited to see how it goes down and to see what happens. Here's the other thing too. I just think that it's going to be actually an exciting time, and I'm very curious to see how it all plays out. And I was talking to Tristan Ahumada
Oh, yeah.
about it, because here's the thing: the whole buyer agreement, right? The buyer agent agreement. It even says it in the settlement, and then people have been talking about this, but to get a buyer to sign something like that, now it's a good thing because it's setting the stage for that relationship. The agent's going to have to say, here's what I'm going to do for you. So not just, yeah, I'll find you something. Now the agent's going to have to say, I have a list, or to sign this agreement, understand these are the things that I'm going to do on my end. And here's what you will pay if I accomplish that for you. So I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing for agents to start saying that this is all. And you know what? Here's the thing that's good about it too, is that agents are doing all of that stuff, right? And it's a lot of work, but it's not really laid out in paper what they're doing. So sometimes buyers might think they're not doing anything or they're not doing much, when in reality, now's the chance for the real estate agent to say, oh no, I do quite a lot. This is what you can expect from me. And they go, okay, I see that. So I think that's going to be a good thing. Tristan Ahumada brought this up. I said, it's going to be weird because whoever gets to the buyer agreement first wins. But I know there's going to have to be stipulation in there where the buyer could get out of the arrangement if the buyer's agent didn't do their part of the agreement, right? There's going to have to be steps. And he goes, you know what I think it's going to be? And we got to respect Tristan. He's a pretty bright guy in this. And he says, I think what you're going to wind up seeing is buyer agreements per property. Okay, I want to tour a house. I came to you off of Zillow or something. I want to see a house. Have you signed a buyer agreement? No, I have not. I'd like you to sign mine. I don't want to sign a blanket buyer agreement. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, I do need you to sign at least a buyer agreement for me for this particular home. If you buy this particular home, I'm the person. I think he's probably right in that regard. What do you think about that?
You know what? I'm a little torn on this because for
Yeah.
a couple things. Because first of all, for 30 years, I've used a client discussion checklist for buyers that
Mm,
basically goes through the entire process of what I do and
nice.
how the buyer process works. And at the end, I have them sign a buyer broker agreement. Now, I will confess that up until all this happened, I basically just had a preferred client agreement that there was no compensation because I was going to be compensated by the seller.
Mm,
Now, of course, things have changed. So now I'm revising the buyer broker agreement part at the end. But for 30 years, I've used like 25-point client discussion checklist of what's going to
nice.
happen in the real estate process. And what's funny is I've preached that for years. And I've said, you do a listing appointment and you get a contract signed to list their home. Do you not? Yes.
Hmm.
Then why would you not do the exact same thing with a buyer? That's just not how it is. Buyers will never sign it. I'm like, they've signed it for 30 years with
Yeah.
me. They've signed it for as long as I've been in business. I created it when I first started. And what's funny is I created that checklist based on things that went wrong in the real estate process.
Sure.
Like you'll remember this. The perfect example was back in the day when we sold HUD homes and they had the $500 down. You could buy a HUD home for 500 bucks
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
or VA. No. And the problem was then it came time to get the earnest money deposit from them for the purchase contract and they didn't have any money. And I was like, they said, yeah, but it said no money down. I said, yeah. So then I had to add this to my checklist to make sure I'm having these conversations with buyers and helping them understand the process.
Yeah.
So all the different things. Another one that you'll appreciate is there are two parts of closing costs to a real estate transaction, right? There are the real estate closing costs, things like title and escrow, city and county transfer tax. And then there's the loan fees. What would happen is in the contract, I'd say, oh, I got the seller to pay the closing costs, meaning title and escrow. Then they go sit down with the lender and they're like, oh, yeah, she got the seller to pay all the closing costs. And the lender's wait. And we would get to close of escrow and they're not prepared for the fact that they might have 2 or 3% in closing costs.
Yeah.
So that became another thing I added to my client discussion checklist. But I cannot tell you how many arguments I have been in with big team leaders and stuff. Oh, yeah, buyers will never sign that stuff. They'll never. I'm like, really? They sign it all the time if you sit
Yeah.
down and explain it and help them understand the process. So to me, this has been a long time coming. How we'll get compensated on the buyer side, still up in the air. But I think depending on what happens with inventory, and the bigger issue is inventory. If there's
Right.
too much inventory, we're going to get whatever we want out of the sellers. If there's not
Right.
enough inventory, it's going to be a battle.
Right.
And there's, to me, the people who are going to suffer the most, in my opinion, are your first time home buyers,
Yep.
veterans, right?
Mhm.
Your people who haven't really bought a home, don't understand
Your
the
underserved communities, your first-time home buyers, your vets, just like you said, everybody that the government's supposed to be trying to make sure we can help these peeps, they're the ones that are gonna suffer the most. And
exactly.
you're
And
exactly
that's
right.
really the tragedy of it. And so I
Yep.
hope that things come around to where that won't happen is really my hope. But it is there's going to be opportunity for sure and there's going to be some fallout from it
Mm.
as well. What that looks, I don't know, because everybody's settling. A couple of the big real estate companies, I know EXP is not settled yet, but I just saw that Real settled.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
A lot of them are settling, and which it's the biggest issue is who's going to make money at the end of the day. The sellers are going to get $7 a piece if they're lucky, and you got attorneys who made billions of
Right.
dollars.
It's ridiculous.
To me,
It is
it
ridiculous.
That's the system that needs to be overhauled because I want to go sit down with these attorneys and say,
Oh, I know.
really? Like, how are you compensated and paid?
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, I think that change can sometimes be really good, and there's opportunity in it every time, and there's opportunity in this. And like you said, we'll find a way. Agents will find a way. Buyers will find a way, and it'll all get worked out. It's going to happen. And here's the good news too. I told this when I was chatting with Tristan about it. I said, at least we know the train's coming. It's not like we wake up tomorrow and this is all changed right now and it's what? No, it's we got till July. Like it's the line's in the sand. We know where it is and when it's going to be here so we can start preparing ourselves for how this is going to go,
Yeah,
So
100%.
yeah,
So let's switch channels a little bit
yeah.
because how we originally got reconnected here recently
Mm,
is you have a new, cool marketing thing you're doing that's MoveTube, right?
yeah,
Help
move to
tell a bit about that.
MoveTube is we so about 8 years ago, one of my business partners, Kevin Bilberry, we had a product together. Brian and me and Kevin had a product called Listing Booster, which was flyers and property websites and things like that. But there's several of these types of products out there, and we had one too and it was doing okay. And about 8 or 9 years ago, Kevin was with his brother-in-law in Austin, Texas, and his brother-in-law had a Roku. Now, are you familiar with what so there's
Yeah.
streaming devices now: Roku, Amazon TV, Apple TV, Google TV, and then some TVs either have those built in or there's TVs that are just smart TVs like Samsung, LG. And so he saw Roku and he was futzing around with it. He's like, oh, this is cool. And his brother-in-law was like, yeah, man, I'm cutting my cable or I'm just getting internet and this is all I need. And Kevin was like, really? And so Kevin got addicted to it pretty quickly. And he realized very quickly on Roku, like you could search streaming channels. And he's looking at all these channels. He goes, dude, there's the most stupid, ridiculous channels in the world in there, like horrible channels of just people somehow submitting something to Roku. And now it's a quote unquote channel. And he goes, they're dreadful. But he said, but there's some cool stuff in there too. They got categories. And he goes, I bet I could put property search on this thing and compress a bunch of time. But about a year later, he had gotten it done, and we spent a lot of money doing it because it to code for TV is not a website. It's not the same animal.
Yeah.
And so we had to figure all that out and get it all done. And I tell you what, he did it, and he created this thing called MoveTube, which is a property search channel on streaming TV devices, Roku, Amazon, Apple, all the stuff. Now, here's the thing. 8 years ago, I think all of the streaming devices together may have been 50 million people or whatever, 50 million devices might have been out there. Today, it's like 250 million. Like it's exploding. Streaming TV is off the charts. I believe Kevin too. I think at some point it'll all be streaming. Like your Comcast, all that stuff, it'll be on a device or on your TV. You subscribe to Comcast and it just streams to your TV. That's where it's going. Yeah, it's huge. He put it together shortly after it was put together. We were only about not even a year in. We didn't ever market it or anything like that, but we noticed that we were getting installs and people were reaching out to us about it. We're like, how is this happening? And then we checked with Roku because that was our first launch was Roku. And they said, oh, you guys are kicking butt, man. Like you guys are like everybody loves your channel. And it's like the stay time on your channel is 90 minutes. And we're like, what's going on? And they're like, oh yeah, you guys are getting like 400 installs a week. And we're like, how? And they go, you just got, since you're doing well, you show up first. So if anybody searches real estate, so you think about this, people love to watch real estate TV, real
I know.
estate shows. So they
Yeah.
get these streaming devices and they go, let me find a real estate show. And when you type real estate into any one of those devices, Roku or Amazon or Apple, you go REAL, MoveTube shows up number one. It's the number
Wow.
one. And it's real estate search on TV. So people are like, what? And they click on that thing and they get it. So it's about not even a year in, somebody at iHeartRadio, of course, you're probably familiar with iHeartRadio. They're the largest music streaming thing. And someone saw it on Roku. And at the time we had canned music. Like when you're listening to it, we had some music that you had to buy, pay for the licensing. And it would play like 20 songs over and over again
Right.
while you're looking for a property. And somebody at iHeartRadio became a fan of the channel. I was like, this thing's killer. And they reached out to us and said, hey man, what about instead of that canned music, we let you integrate with iHeartRadio. That way they could listen to any music that they want to listen to while they're surfing. We're like, sure, sounds good. And Boom, that was done. So we got iHeartRadio. So this thing, anyways, blown up to be this really cool thing in the streaming space, which is a huge space, but it was always just a novelty thing for us. We weren't sure what to do with it. So fast forward to about 3 years ago. 3 years ago, we decided, based on the feedback we were getting from real estate agents and Listing Booster and the loan officer and Listing Booster, that the TV thing was the thing. That was the thing that was moving the needle for real estate agents. That was the thing that was getting people excited. So we built a product around it. It's called MoveTube. We just call it MoveTube, and it's MoveTube.ai is the website to get signed up for it. But essentially, it's absolutely free for real estate agents. We wanted to make it free. And here's why. We wanted to make it free for agents because without their listings, we have nothing. We have nothing. Hey, Marguerite, take a little effort to get a listing once in a while. Takes a little bit of an effort, right? A little muscle. Got to put a little muscle, apply a little muscle. We know you guys are working your butt off to get those things. It's not easy. Then just fall out of the sky. So you're bringing that to the channel. That's the content that's getting the consumer excited. So how can we charge an agent? That would be just rude. Okay. So we had to figure out a way to not charge them, but we got RESPA. Right. So we got to deal with RESPA. So we worked with attorneys and we put together a comprehensive compliance stance on it, which is getting approved by lenders all across the country. And so what it is, the loan officer is not paying for an account for you, because as an agent, you can get in for free and you can pick any advertising sponsor you want. Okay. So you don't have to be stuck with some guy that gives it to you. You could go in there and pick another person, right? You can pick anybody you want to be your advertising sponsor. The real estate agent has to agree to have an advertising sponsor, which the most logical thing is a loan officer these days. So the stance compliance wise is the loan officer is paying to have advertising on your personal listings, right? On the TV, and there's some web-based stuff that it goes on. We have had no problem getting that done. Loan officers are happy to do it because they're happy to bring something to their real estate partners. Hey, will this help? Does this help? And it does. And real estate agents, they don't have to pay for it. So it's really worked out to be really good. And here's the real win in it for the real estate agent, especially with the settlement, right? With the settlement, you're going to see more and more people in this space, real estate agents, doing their best to try and go get some listings. Competition to get listings is going to increase because they know this is the sweet spot. It always has been, but now more of an emphasis is going to be put on that. Competition is going to increase, I think, in that space. And thanks to the media, like you said, I think more sellers are going to be more inclined these days to interview more than one agent, right? To see what's it going to cost, right? So this little thing is happening. With MoveTube, the beautiful thing is when you're going to sit or going to a listing presentation or appointment where the seller's probably going to be talking to more than one agent, you got your folder, you got your comps, you got your stuff, whatever it is you bring to the table. With MoveTube, you get a marketing flyer that's beautiful. It shows people sitting around their TV searching for listings, and it says, list with me and I'll get your home on TV. Explains about streaming TV, which they already have. I guarantee you 9 out of 10 of them already have a Roku or an Amazon or whatever. They already are familiar with streaming TV. And you get to say, yeah, you list with me. I'm going to get you on this cool channel. It's called MoveTube. I'm going to get you on TV. It's on Roku, Amazon, and Apple. Do you happen to have one of those? And they always are going to go, yeah, I got one of those. Your listing will be there if you list with me. And it has a little QR code so they can scan it and see how to install it on their streaming device. And here's what I know for a fact, because I've been on these listing presentations when this flyers come out, is every single time that a seller sees this flyer and learns about this TV channel thing, every single time they go, what is that? Really? Well, that's cool. Really? How do I see it on my TV? How do I see it? Every time, every single time. That it really does help an agent win a listing, right? Setting them apart when they're on that presentation where they know the seller's talking to more than one agent. So it's a real winner for everybody involved.
It's funny
and for the consumer. Yeah.
We're talking, it had to be 20 years ago or more, 25 years ago. The regular TV, you'd have your regular stations, 3, 10, and 13 or whatever they were. And then there was like the PBS channel.
Yeah.
And then there was another like local community channel where as agents, we could be on there and
I remember.
pictures and all that kind of stuff on there.
Yeah.
I was having to take mine down because I had some issues with a creepy stalker.
That happens.
But it was so interesting because people would see me places. They're like, I saw you on TV. Like now I'm like a celebrity or something.
Yeah.
It was so funny, but I'm really excited. I have 2 listing appointments next week, and I'm gonna
Use the
definitely
flyer. Yeah, use
flyer.
the flyer. Yeah, just say, "Hey, listen to me. I'm gonna get you on TV. This thing you got a Roku or anything?" They'll be like, "Yeah." You show them that thing, they'll be, "What? How do
Well,
I see it?"
is this nationwide?
Yeah.
Okay, so if agents are interested in learning more about it, what's the best way for them to
Just go to movetube.ai, not .com.
okay,
Movetube.ai. Just go there. There's a little video, kind of explains what it is, and there's an agent sign up, which is free.
yeah,
Once they get signed up, they can go in and start looking for loan officers in their area, pick their state. They can start looking for loan officers in their area to connect you, or they can invite their loan officer in. So if they have a favorite loan officer, they can say, "Hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to be my sponsor?" And
right.
they can invite them in. For loan officers, it's
It's
very
cool.
inexpensive too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to try it out, and it's really cool, and that's how we got connected. It was so funny. Your guy
Yeah.
called me, and he's Frank Garay. I'm like, "No, who's that?" No, I said, no, I go, "Of course I know Frank. I've known him many years." And so then when he said where you and I were gonna be able to get on a call, I was looking forward to it. So
Yeah, so is I 'cause I remember you too. I know we've connected up in the Sac area before, and I don't
yeah.
know how or why, but I remembered your name.
I
And
remembered at one point coming down to your guys' place in your Vacaville, right? Or
yeah,
Vallejo?
yeah,
Yeah. And coming to your because I remember it was off the freeway on the
yeah.
right-hand side there somewhere. And I don't know why I was there. We have been racking my brain the last few days trying to figure it out, but
You were in our studio.
I was in your studio.
I
Yeah.
remember. Yeah, so that's when when Bill brought that up, I go, "Marguerite, I know Marguerite." I know you were a very successful agent too. I was like, "Hey, I'm starstruck. I get to shoot the breeze with Marguerite and maybe
Oh,
get connected in something." So I was pretty
that's
excited about
awesome.
it too. Yeah.
I'm super excited to try that out, and it was great to reconnect with you, and I feel so privileged to have you on my podcast. I'm excited about that, and thank you so much for taking the time to spend some time with me today.
You bet, and it was my privilege to be here. So, yeah, it's always a pleasure anytime, and, yeah, heck, I gotta get you on my podcast now.
Let's do it.
Fairsies. Fairsies. Yeah,
Send
man.
me a link. I'm happy to get on there. Yeah, I don't
I'll
know.
do
I'll
it.
figure out something good to talk about, but we can come
Oh,
up with
heck
something.
yeah. Even this conversation we had just now, I think we should just have that on my podcast because I think it's a good conversation to have.
100%.
Right.
Thank you again for joining us today, Frank. And thank you, everybody out there in podcast land, for joining us on Real Estate Real World, where we get to talk to all the cool people. And be sure to share us on social media. And we love reviews. It helps rank us up there on those fancy rankings these days. So thank you again for joining us on Real Estate Real World. Go out and make it an amazing day. Thank you for joining us today on Real Estate Real World, where we talk with masters and leaders in the real estate industry and beyond on how we can raise the bar in our industry. Please subscribe over on iTunes, and while you're there, be sure to give us a review. Your reviews encourage us and help others to find our podcast for show notes and hot topics on what's going on right now in our real estate industry. Also, hop on over to www.realestaterealworld.com and add your name to our email to get early advance notice of upcoming podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and go out there and be a part of the elite masterclass and raising the bar on the real estate industry.